Homework Hotline, the show with all the helping hands on all the homework needs. I'm your host, Isaiah Gira, and we have teamed up with some special tutors to bring you this show. Each episode, we go over certain subjects for about 10 minutes each, and you guys can join live at our Twitch at Hawk Media Group News. Meanwhile, our tutors will be working on sample problems based on the topics currently being worked on in your classes. So, without any further ado, let's get right into this. We have some familiar returning faces joining us, Sarah, Vincent, and Graciela. And we have some new exciting guests to join our panel of tutors, Erica, James, and Leticia. Thank you so much for joining the Homework Hotline crew. We're so happy to have you here. So, we're going to get started today with Vincent and a little mini lesson in Algebra 2. So, Vincent, if you will, let's get our homework on.
All right, thanks for having me again. Today, for Algebra 2, I'm going to be going over some exponent rules. I have 5 of them I want to do. I'm going to go over each of them pretty quickly. So let's just start. So first, we have multiplying 2 numbers with exponents. The rule for this looks like this. So when you're multiplying 2 numbers with exponents, you take the exponents and you add them. So for example, if we had x squared, times x cubed, you add 2 and the 3, you get x to the 5th. Very important, it is not x to the 6th. Okay, do not multiply the exponents, you add the exponents. So that's the first rule. Now, let's say we have 2 numbers and we're dividing them. So let's say the rule rather is x to the a power or x to the b power. You take the exponents and you subtract them. So we can have, let's say we have x to the 7th and y to the 9th over x to the 2nd and y to the 5th. When you have multiple variables, you just subtract the exponents of the like variables. So we look at our x's first. We see we have an x to the 7th and an x to the 2nd. So we subtract those, we get x to the 5th, subtract the 7 and the 2. And for our y's, we have a 9 of an exponent and other exponents 5, subtract 9 and 5, we get y to the 4th. That's the second rule when you have dividing by 2 numbers with exponents. When you're raising, this is the third rule, when you're raising exponents to other exponents, the rule for this looks like this. You do x and you multiply the exponents. This is when you multiply them. So let's say we have 5x cubed over y squared, and we're taking this and we're raising it by a power of 2. So we start with our numerator. We square the number first. We square the 5 first, 25. And this is where we apply the power to power rule. X cubed, the exponent we're raising it to is 2. You multiply the exponents, 3 times 2 is 6. So it's 25x to the 6th over, now we work on the denominator y to the 2nd, multiply the exponents together, which is y to the 4th. And that will be your answer for that one. That's the third rule. Now the fourth rule, when you have negative exponents, this is kind of usually applied incorrectly. So basically what you're doing is you're taking whatever's being raised to the negative exponent and sending it to the other part of the fraction. So I want to go over that quick. So let's say we have 5x squared to the negative first power. What you do here is you send this 5x squared to the denominator, because if you think about it, this is technically over 1, right? So it's 5x squared. We put that in the denominator. We flip the fraction basically. So it's 1 over 5x squared. You do keep the exponent, but since it's a 1, it doesn't change anything, so you don't have to write it. And then if you started with 1 over 5x squared to the negative first power, you would flip it again and it would bring the 5x squared into the numerator. Very important, the negative exponent does not change the sign of the expression. So make sure you know how to apply that rule. And lastly, we have radical to fraction exponents. So the rule for this looks like this. turn this into the exponent in the radical becomes our numerator, and the index, or the exponent on the outside of the radical, becomes our denominator. So that turns into xa over b. So that goes from a radical to a fraction. So let's say we have squared in the denominator and the index is 3. Exponent inside the radical goes to the numerator, 2. Sorry, remember, write the x first, 2 over the index, which is the denominator, which is a 3. And then you could be asked to go from radical to a fraction, or you can be asked to go from the fraction, so x to the 2/3 power, and you could be asked to put that in a radical, so the denominator becomes the index, and the numerator becomes the exponent inside radical. So x squared, and you take the cube root of that. So those are the 5 rules I have. One last note quickly I want to go over is, if you have this is a mistake a lot of people make. Super important. This is not x squared plus y squared. You have to FOIL these terms. So what it really looks like is x plus y times x plus y, because you have to FOIL it. So that's everything I have for my Algebra 2 lesson. Thanks for listening, and let's head over back to Isaiah.
Thank you so much, Vincent. That was awesome. Shout out to Daryl in the comments. Let the homework begin. Now we're going to bring it to James, but before we get into our next subject, a little shout out to our Homework Hotline crew who make sure everything in the show runs smoothly. Jose, Nick, Ethan, and the wonderful Miss McLean. Thank you so much for contributing all that you do. So, James, you may go right ahead on with your lesson. The floor is yours, sir.
Great, appreciate it. Hi guys, my name is James, and today I decided to teach a small lesson about average velocity. It's a basic lesson in physics, and it's a great foundation for continuing on with the course. So what average velocity really is, it's basically just examining how far an object moves in relation to time. A lot of people get it confused with speed, which is not what we're looking at. It is very important that you do not confuse this with speed. So the first example problem we got here is a ball rolls 3 meters east, hits a wall, and rolls 2 meters west before coming to a stop. The ball only travels for 5 seconds before coming to a complete stop. Find the average velocity of the ball. So what we're looking at here is we have this ball that for some reason went into a wall and bounced back and stopped right here, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this average velocity formula here and calculate the average velocity of the ball. So triangle X here really means the distance, the final distance of the ball minus the initial distance of the ball. Your change in time is your final time minus your initial time. Okay, so what this all shows here is that we have, all we do now is plug and play. So our displacement final is going to be this right here. Okay, so if our ball traveled 3 meters east and bounced back 2 meters, that shows that our ball actually only moved 1 meter. And we subtract that with our initial, which was 3. And the whole time that changed was 5 seconds. So what's gonna end up happening is gonna be 1/5. And when we plug in our x initial, it's going to be 3. And our x final is 2. So my fault about that. So it's 2 minus 3, which is gonna give you -1. And our time final, which is 5 seconds, minus our time initial, 0 seconds, so that's 5. Our average velocity was 1 foot over 5 seconds. And that's all I really have for our average velocity lesson. I really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Here we have with us for our next lesson is the esteemed host of Tabletop 3, Erica Fish. Thank you so much for coming on and tutoring. What are you be teaching for us today?
Today I'll be teaching a little bit of Spanish 1 and maybe some review for Spanish 2 takers.
Oh, awesome. Well, before you start, I will shout out our Twitch. We air every Thursday, and our YouTube, HMG News on YouTube, we air these every Monday. So, Erica, you might go right ahead and start teaching you Spanish.
All right, gracias, Isaiah. So, today we're going to be going over conjugation for AR verbs. In Spanish, we have 3 types of verbs. We have AR verbs, we have ER verbs, and we have IR verbs. But today, we're just going to go over AR because those are the most basic and usually the most that you'll find when doing Spanish. So, before we can actually start conjugating any verbs, we have to understand, hey, Erica, what does this all mean? Well, I don't know what these words are. That's okay, I'm going to tell you. So, pretty much these to the side in black are our pronouns. And how it works in Spanish is unlike in English is a lot different in how verbs work at least, is you change the end of whatever verb you have to specify what pronoun you are using. So who are you, directing the verb for? So yo is I, which is kind of nice because when we change our verb from AR to whatever we want it to be, it's kind of nice because yo, oh, okay, it kind of works well. And then we have two. Two is you in Spanish, which is also kind of nice because it rhymes. It makes it a little easier for our brains to remember. And then we have él, ella, and usted. Él is he, ella is she, and usted is kind of, a lot of people get confused by usted, but it pretty much just means it can be male or female, but it's a way of using a formal pronoun. So if you're addressing maybe someone older than you, or a teacher, or a boss, whatever. And that is going to change. 2 is going to change to us, and él, ella, or usted. So third person singular is going to change to a. But we'll go over that more. And then we have nosotros. Nosotros is pretty much we. So when you're saying like, oh, Clara and I, you use nosotros. Now, a lot of people get confused by vosotros, which I don't blame you because I get confused a lot too. And that's because it's mostly used in Spain. It's a pronoun that we really only end up using if you're a Spanish speaker who lives in Spain. And all it really means is y'all or you guys. So it's informal. So don't use it when you're talking to a teacher or your parents because that's rude. So don't do that. But yeah, that's all it really is. And you probably won't use it a ton, but just in case, because it'll be on tests, make sure you learn it. And then we have ellos, ellas, and ustedes. Ellos is, now in Spanish, the default for whenever we're talking about pronouns, at least is male. Same thing goes for nouns and pretty much anything. So let's say you have a group of 3 girls and 1 guy, you still would address them as ellos. It doesn't matter. But if you have like a group of 4 girls, then they're ellas. But if you have 1 guy, that makes it ellos. And ustedes, again, is just when you're addressing multiple formal people. So maybe you're addressing both your parents, or you have multiple bosses. You use ustedes. Okay. So when we are saying I, so maybe you're saying like, I am taking out the trash, or I'm going on a walk, you're going to say, or let's use hablar. Hablar is pretty much a word for saying to talk. So you would take, you would take off the AR, because normally the verb is like this, it's hablar. So you would take off the AR, just get rid of it, and it becomes hablo. And let's say, actually, no, I'm not talking, you're talking. So once again, take off the AR, and it just becomes hablas. No, actually, I'm not talking, you're not talking, she's talking. So, habla. Oops, sorry, habla. All right, let's say Clara and I are talking. Clara y yo hablamos. Then, that, once again, it's kind of the same pattern, and even if it becomes hard to memorize at first, once you get it, you got it. Vosotros is habláis. Don't forget to put your accent over the A, or else it'll sound not correct. We don't want that. If you didn't have the accent, it would be like habláis, which that doesn't sound very good. So we say habláis, like you're saying ice at the end, habláis. And then we have hablan. So let's say they're talking. That's how you use it. So ellos hablan. Okay. So now that we have all that, a good way to remember, by the way, which is how I learned for conjugation, at least in present tense. These are all present tense verbs, by the way, that we're conjugating. We're not doing, this isn't past or future. This is just basic present tense. You would, how I memorized it was o, as, a, almost on. I didn't learn vosotros my first year, so we didn't have that. But you can put that in there. You can memorize it with vosotros, and it doesn't really screw it up. You can go o, as, a, almost ice on, if that works. And it's not something you're gonna get right off the bat because it doesn't work with how our brains are programmed to understand verbs. So it's really something you just kind of have to get by just speaking the language a lot. And after a while, it become kind of second nature. You won't have to really think about it. You can be like, okay, yo hablo, because you know I'm speaking, or tú hablas, you're speaking. You have to get used to it. So if you guys have any verbs you would want me to conjugate, maybe like caminar or probar, you can tell me in the chat, or if not, then you guys are good to go.
All right. Gracias, Señorita Fish. We have some pretty avid Spanish speakers in the chat. Raquel saying buenas tardes. Raquel, being the editor for one of our shows, Raving for Retail, airs every Monday. Check that out. And check out Tabletop Spree on Fridays on our HMG YouTube. Before we begin our last lesson of the evening, we have a question from Miss Fisk in the comments saying about Erica's previous Spanish lesson, can you conjugate eat? Erica, can you answer that for us?
Yeah, okay, so that's an ER verb, so I guess we'll change this real quick. Conjugating an ER verb, which is not very different from conjugating an AR verb, it's with E's instead of A's. So I already have the first one up. Como is, it's the same, it's just you change the O at the end, but it's a little different. Like if we're saying you eat, it'd be comes. And then if we're doing él, ella, usted come, and then this would, for nosotros, comemos, maybe you're saying like you and your family are eating, mi familia comemos, and then this, oh, sorry. And I'm just going to change to my Spanish keyboard real quick so we can put the accent mark that up, comes, or comes. And then same for this one, you just change to comen. Again, it's not too different. You really just, if you want to conjugate an ER verb, it's a little different if you want to conjugate an IR verb, but comer is ER, so yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Erica. Now we're going to get rolling into Leticia's lesson. Leticia, thanks for coming on the show. You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. My name is Leticia, and I will be going over a CCW paragraph. So the concept of CCW paragraphs is typically introduced to people when you enter your sophomore and junior year of high school. But the truth is that being able to write a persuasive argument is always going to be important. So once we get into writing, so a CCW paragraph, the acronym stands for claim, context, data, and warrant. So a claim is a position in the argument that you're taking. It can also be seen as a thesis. It's what you're trying to prove, and it must be arguable. The context, which is the second component of the paragraph, is where you're getting your information from. It can also be seen in the form of a signal phrase. For example, according to the passage, or in Shakespeare's new book, it's kind of your signal phrase. It's your introduction towards your data. Your data is the information that you're using to prove your side of the argument. It's important that this data is reliable and relevant. It shouldn't be more than 5 years old, and it should come from trusted sources. It's proof and examples. A warrant is the key to making this argument plausible. It's probably your most important component. It's the connection between all of these other components. It's the explanation. So let's apply this to an example. So your claim, which is the position that you're taking, would be that it is going to rain today. So that's your claim. After your claim, you go into your signal phrase or your context. According to the news anchor, which could be, a reliable news anchor, there are very dark clouds outside. So far you have your claim, your context, and your data. So your warrant comes after your data, and it says, dark clouds are an early sign of precipitation. The clouds appear dark because they are holding water within them. Therefore, it'll rain today. You see, the way that they explain their data it really drives in the point. It allows your argument to not only be stated, but to be explained. And that's why it's really important. As I stated before, most of you probably already do this. And being that this is a new concept that's introduced to a lot of juniors, they're kind of confused when this pops up on a new assignment. But the truth is that we've always been explaining our data, but now we see it as a warrant. And even though I don't think it's gonna rain today, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Leticia. It seems like you got some fans in our comments. Kaylin, Raquel, and Miss Fisk all cheering you on and representing Biomed. That's amazing. And I guess that wraps up our show for today. We are so happy to have you guys all here with us today. Make sure to check us out on our YouTube at HMG News. Check us out on our Twitch at Hawk Media Group News and our Instagram at hawkmediagroup.news. So if you guys want to become like one of our awesome tutors, go to our Instagram and fill out one of our forms in our bio, and that wraps it all up. So if you guys need any help with your homework, remember, you know who to call. It's the Homework Hotline. See you next week.